You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hey guys, this is Georgia Smith. I am daughter of Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, and you're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Harmer.
A warm welcome. It's episode 72 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and my guest today is former WWF, WCW and Global Wrestling Federation superstar Scott Putski, the son of wrestling great legend Ivan Putski. He was a collegiate standout in American football. He was drafted to the Houston Oilers, but there's a story behind that which then led to him going into wrestling. Hear about his time in WWF. You'll also get to hear about some of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes in WCW. So, without further ado, my guest, former WWF, former WCW, former Global Wrestling Federation wrestler, Mr. Scott Putski. Enjoy. My guest this evening, all the way from Fort Worth in Texas, former WWF superstar, WCW superstar, Global Wrestling Federation star too, Mr. Scott Putski, all the way from Texas this evening on Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
Hey, brother. How you doing, man? Good to be on, Stu.
I've mivied you for a long time to come on this, so it's finally, I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate it so much, man, you sparing the time, because I'm sure you're busy with stuff. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sparing the time, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. Enjoy it, man. Now,
I'm going to get right the way back here. When was the first time you encountered pro wrestling? When are your first memories of pro wrestling? That's going to be my first one for you, Scott.
Well, when I was a little kid here, Dad started, wrestling down here in Texas. Joe Blanchard got him going. I'm sure you know Tully Blanchard, his dad. And back in the day then, you had 3 territories in Texas. I mean, you had, Joe Blanchard had from Waco South, Fritz Von Erich had from Waco North, and then the Funks had Amarillo up in the Panhandle. But, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of good memories. Texas wrestling back then was way different than any – it was a mixture of ECW and WCW. It was the bodies and men of WCW doing the ECW stuff, like the bull rope matches, the Texas street fights. Those are all here, developed in Texas and done years before people up north or in different countries, some of that.
What a state to be in, just to go back to that, as you say, the stuff you got to see in a territory aspect.
It was incredible. Back then they traveled to different territories. I mean, you didn't just stay in one territory.
Were you aware of any other places outside of Texas through TV and stuff like that, or were you just straight like? Oh
no, he worked for Bill Watts up in Oklahoma, the McGurks in Louisiana, Florida, California with Pat Patterson out there in San Francisco, San Diego areas. I mean, all over. And then he went to Vince. He was one of the really guys to get it going with Vince McMahon back when it was WWF. And he was just loyal to Vince, but still he'd do stuff with Joe Blanchard and Fritz. And he just, he had a loyalty to the guys that got him going. So on his days off, they'd come down and work for Fritz and then, fly in from New York and land in Dallas. And it was him and Bruiser Brody. And they'd land in Dallas. And then they'd come down and work for Fritz in Dallas, and they'd drive down and work for, Joe, Mr. Blanchard in Austin or San Antonio, and then they'd go home or stay for a day. And a lot of times Bruiser was from San Antonio. And so that's kind of how it worked. So, but a lot of times he'd just stay over at our house instead of make the drive late. But what a good guy too.
What was when you first met Bruiser, what did you think? As assuming you were quite young at that point, what was your first thought when you saw him in person?
He was one of my dad's friends. I mean, you got to understand back then. I mean, I grew up, and my dad knew Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, the Pittsburgh Steeler line, John Kolb, Mike Webster, guys like that, Thornton, and just he was always around big guys. So he was in the World's Strongest Man competition with Brian Oldfield and Reinhardt and Williams, and I was just around that, man, and I just assumed that's how men were back then. You grew up and you got big. I mean, that's just kind of the mentality that we were around. So I don't think I was ever really intimidated by it, but it was So it was just a thing. It was just a normal day for me.
Who were some of the guys, you know, when you obviously saw it as a kid, who was some of your favourites in Texas and further afield? Who did you like watching? Who'd you gravitate to?
Wahoo McDaniels, the Kabuki. Oh man, Scott Casey. Jose Lothario, Mil Mascaras. Jimmy Snuka, of course. You know, Bruno, Giant Andre. Superstar Billy Graham was one of my favorites that my dad worked with, probably if not the favorite. Guys like that, man. I was around all that. I'd say I was around wrestling back when it was real.
Go back to Superstar. Going back to Superstar. He was miles ahead of his time, wasn't he?
Yeah, him and Dad were the first ones that were bodybuilders. You know, Dad went from being real big, the dumb Pollock, and then he got into, hooked up with Schwarzenegger and all those guys and just started bodybuilding. And at the end, he was just shredded.
When did your dad move from Poland to the States? I thought I'd like to ask you that, actually.
Well, Dad was in a concentration camp. They were liberated from a concentration camp in Poland, and they went to Austria, and then they came over to the United States when, they were liberated from the concentration camps when the Americans invaded. And from there, they went to Austria, lived in Austria for about a year, and then they came over to Texas as misplaced persons.
Right, okay. Yeah, I thought I'd ask you that because I didn't know. You were the man to ask on that one, definitely. To you now, when did you start training in pro wrestling? When did you get your start, man? Probably
you mean just working out and training in it?
I think getting yourself into, getting yourself ready to become a wrestler. I think stand off that, man.
All my life, man. We used to get in the ring when we were kids. I have 2 brothers, but the only difference were we weren't smart. We weren't smarted up there was a work. And so we'd beat the shit out of each other. If we gave each other a clothesline, we'd give each other a clothesline. Before the matches, we'd go in and the rings are set up and nobody's in there and all the, guys are in the back. And we'd get in the ring, Dad's like, yeah, y'all get in the ring and play. And, we'd been around it all our lives and we'd seen it. So we'd get in there and, if we kicked each other, we kicked each other. If we punched each other, we punched each other. Nobody smarted us up. So we would beat the shit out of it. And I just remember the old timers just laughing, and we kicked the piss out of each other.
So you wanted to be a wrestler at that point? Was it always in your mindset, or did you want to do something else?
I think it was something that I knew I'd always fall back on. I played football. I went to TCU, Texas Christian University, Division I football. Started 4 years at Texas Christian. Then I went and got drafted. I went to Houston, played with the Oilers.
Wow.
And my rookie season in camp, I tore my Achilles heel. So I was done with that. So I took about a year or 2 off and then just started, getting into wrestling. But when I originally started wrestling, it was my summer job in college. I worked for the Savoldis and ICCW up there in, New York and all that area up there. I didn't do a whole lot of shows, probably 10, 11 a year, but that's where I got my start with the Savoldis.
Did the football help you in the sense starting out and training for wrestling? Did you take stuff from that and then implement it into wrestling?
Well, I was always an athlete, so it didn't really matter. I just, toughness wise, football is a lot tougher than wrestling, hands down. It's not even close. It's, and I was a running back, so I wasn't afraid to run you over. So my deal, if I broke out, if there was one guy, I was going to run towards him and try to just, run his ass over. So it wasn't, it was just a transition, really. I think, you look back at all back in the, 60s, 70s and the early 80s, most of those guys, well, all of the wrestlers were an ex-collegiate athletes, in baseball, football, wrestling, or something. You know, they didn't just take any kid off the street and let them wrestle. And it was more of a fraternity back then.
Total different times, wasn't it, Scott? You know, for me, from what I've read and what I've seen as a fan,
yeah.
You being in it, just times then, man, it was just totally different, wasn't it?
Right, Stu. I mean, I was the kid. I was the son of Ivan Putski, and he didn't smart me up till I was probably out of high school.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a work, and it was constantly, you know, that was back when kayfabe was alive. Now she's like 20 feet under.
I still watch it. I still watch the current product. I think I'm going to get myself in trouble with you here.
Hey, if people don't like what I say and if it bothers them, then the truth hurts. That's all I can say. I'm not going to give you any bullshit. I won't lie to you. And if anybody gets offended by me, they're just pissed off because the truth hurts.
I would not expect anything less from you, man. Just say it how it is. Be true in it, and that's it. Yeah. So going back to how was training in the early days when you were first?
It was tougher, man. I mean, you know, I got trained by my dad, Scott Casey. I mean, there was a lot of people involved in it because I'd get, you know, over the course of my life, I'd get in the ring and the different wrestlers would even show us when we were kids. They'd, hey, do this, you know. So, and just being around them, you know, it was just like an evolution since I was a kid. So and if you looked at my style as opposed to my father's, it's like, you know, night and day. It's not even the same kind of really style.
Did you take things from other guys when you were building up move sets and stuff like in the training, or how did you go about that in the early portion of it with training?
Everybody steals shit from everybody, man. And anybody says they're making stuff up, they're full of shit. Everybody steals. Hey, it's like rock and roll. Rock and roll stole shit. Everybody steals. Nobody's reinventing the wheel, brother. The wheel's already been invented. We're just kind of putting little, you know, tricks and turns on it. But as far as all the moves, they've already been developed. Now people are just kind of tweaking them, doing different things. So yeah, I stole a lot of shit from people. I wouldn't say steal it. I borrowed it.
Did you have those moves in mind yourself from the start, or did it just come as the further you went on?
The further I went on, I didn't really, and I've never thought, I mean, I can't say never thought, it was in the back of my mind, but I always thought I'd go ahead and play football. And, you know, that was pretty much my life, that and weightlifting. And, you know, when that was over, then the next step naturally was, I mean, and I have a degree in criminal justice from TCU. So, you know, but this was a lot funner job.
That's what my missus has got, criminal justice, funnily enough. Mm-hmm. She's got the same degree. So there we go. Yeah, man. Right. Was there anybody noteworthy training with you at the same time?
Booker T, his brother. Who else was in there? Yeah, Dad trained Booker T, or what do they call him now? Booker T, right?
Yeah, Booker. He stuck with Booker. Yeah.
Yeah, Booker T, his brother Stevie. Yeah. Back then, when he was training, the first name Dad gave Booker T, his name was G.I. Bro.
Yeah.
And then Steve, his brother, was the Super Collider.
I've had Stevie on.
Yeah, his deal was the Super Collider.
That's cool. Could you see early on with them two that they were going to be a big thing?
There was a couple guys back then, two other guys. Man, I can't remember their name. One guy did like a Thor gimmick. Another guy did an Indian gimmick. They were great. They just, you know, didn't really, I guess, stick with it. But they had the talent. There was a lot of people that had talent.
How long was it until the first match then?
Well, I like I said, I trained and did it, you know, in the summer when I was wrestling or playing football, collegiate football. But till I really got into it was when I really said, okay, I'm gonna make this a job. When I came to Dallas and worked for Global.
What year was that?
Probably 94.
Wow.
Yeah, 94. And that was back when Grizzly Smith, Jake's dad, was booking there. What a beautiful person, man. That guy. And, you know, I've heard some of the bullshit stories that Jake's claimed about him. And that's not the man I know. Not at all. I would give him a finger if he really said that. But his dad was a beautiful person, the kindest, nicest. You know, he probably helped me the most when I started out. After him and Skandar Akbar, when I'd come back, and they were pretty much the bookers back then, I'd come out from a match and we'd sit down, and he didn't do it with just anybody. You know, he did it with me, and it really helped. And he'd say, you know, Scotty, you know, you did this and this, and that was awesome. You know, you kind of need to work on this. And right here, we need to tell a different story. And, you know, we watch videos, and he was just, I mean, what a great human being. And he's the one Jake got the mind from. his wrestling mentality from his father.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah. Matches within Global, some that maybe stand out for you in that time frame.
There was a guy, Rod Price. I don't know if you're familiar with Rod Price.
No, if I don't know someone, I'll be like,
they called him the California Stud. Big guy. He played with the Raiders for years. Him, Johnny Layfield worked with him. Worked with a lot of people. Black Bart.
I love Black Bart, man.
Oh, what a great person. Good guy. I still keep in touch with Bartsky.
Did some shoot interviews recently. Yeah. Actually, he's done. They're really good. The depth that he went into, and incredible,
right.
Man.
That's Bart. Eddie Gilbert. Raven was down here before he was Raven. I forgot. He was like a preppy guy or something. I don't even remember what it was. But you had a lot of guys come through here, you know, through Texas, Dallas. I mean, I know like the Undertaker, Warrior, Von Erichs, they all got their start down here.
I was going to say, how long were you down there? And then did it lead to WWF straight away from Global?
What people don't really understand is before I went to WWF, I worked with War in Japan. I worked with Mexico. I worked all over, man. I mean, I really kind of perfected my art, and by going into different territories. Loved Japan. Absolutely loved it. Hated the flight and hated the just being up there so long. But as far as the work, I loved it. I was up there with we were the first 6-man tag for War, me, Bob Backlund, and Warlord. And then, Ultimate Dragon was up there. And Don Morocco came up there, and they put him in a devil's costume. It was funny. The first time he came up, because we had already been up there, and he came up, and they put him in a devil's costume with the mask. And he's like, I'm Don Morocco. What the fuck? And so they were like, well, this is what we want to do, and da-da-da-da-da. So he was like, okay. So he went out there in the devil's costume. I mean, he had a tail, like a devil's tail and everything. At the end of the match, he rips his tail off and just started beating the dude with it. It was funny as shit. And finally, they're like, all right, man, you're Don Morocco. So that shit was gone.
How long were you out? How long were you out in Japan for, Scott?
I'd go for like 3-week tours. I went on a couple tours up there. Then I went to Mexico, and I did the Conan 2000 gimmick.
Yeah,
that was crazy, funny shit. But it was fun, and it was just like, I mean, to me, the Mexico style of wrestling, the lucha style, it's just like, and guys don't really do it as much, like we did, because we actually had to follow their style. You got Americans going into Mexico now, they pretty much do their own thing, but we had to kind of follow that style. And it was like a Chinese fire drill, man. It's like, dude, and they're like, I wasn't tagged. They were like, yeah, but you got to go in. I'm like, well, shit, what's the rules? And it was like, there aren't none. So one guy goes out, you go in, and a funny story is I was out there, and I'd been there a while, so we were getting over. And it was after I had fought Ruben Puis Olivares. He's a world welterweight champion. It was wrestler versus boxer. And we did that, went to Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, just all over. It was fun. Ruben was a good guy. And we did that, and then probably the next tour I went up there, the original tour was going to be me and Mil Mascaras. So we start working, and I've known Mil since I was a kid, and he was still in great shape. Of course, I was like 260, just huge. And so, respect. He gets in there. I let him shine. I mean, I bumped, and I didn't bump for nobody there. I mean, I was 10 times bigger than everybody, so physically, so I wasn't going to bump for those guys. But it was Mil Mascaras, and he was still in good shape. So I bumped more than I should have, more than I ever would have for anybody else other than my dad or my brother. And so it comes my turn to shine, and we switch it. I go to hit a clothesline, and he didn't even budge. Of course, I didn't lay my clothesline in like I laid in on everybody else on him. So I said, okay, we're going to play that game. So I just hit the ropes and bow, just took his head off. So I'm sitting there and I'm just pounding him on the back. You know, most guys there were real gentle with him. So I'm just pounding him on the back, I take him up to the top rope. Off the top rope, he's like, Scott, what are you doing? I was like, suplex, Big Daddy, and stood him straight up and came off the thing. So anyway, long story short, after the match, we go to the back and all the little, you know, lucha guys are like looking, what's Mil going to beat him up? So we're sitting in the back and we had our own room, and, you know, I take my stuff. I'm sitting there taking my stuff off when he comes in, and he says, Scott, you need to stop being so stiff. And I was like, Mil, I mean, I gave you so much and you just didn't give me nothing back. So I had to take it, you know. I go, dude, he goes, I understand. You're old school. I said, yes, sir. And he just said, man, he said, you're just like your daddy. Because my dad was known for being a stiff crowbar sucker.
So it's just like that mutual respect between you.
Right,
yeah,
right. But
at the end of the day,
in the same thing, I'm gonna give anybody respect, but if they disrespect me, then it's off. I mean, we'll do it. We can do it one of two ways. It's going to be the easy way or the hard way, but it's going to get done. And, you know, the thing I was always brought up, and the one thing there's two things I'll always remember that my dad told me as a, you know, getting into the business. He said, one, they can't see it. I mean, they can't feel it. They can only see it. Mm-hmm. So make them feel it. I mean, even if you have to be stiff, make them feel it. Never underdo it, overdo it. And two, the day you start believing your gimmick is the day you're done, son. The day you start believing you're Scott Putski for real, check it out. And it's true, because you got a bunch of these guys, and you know, they're sitting here calling a lot of people jabronis. They're the jabroni. They're the freaking mark for themselves, you know? I mean, they really think they're these guys, and they're not. And most of these guys aren't even tough. I mean, you'd be surprised.
Is it like a pretense? Is it with some of these guys?
Yeah, it's pretend. It's la land. It's fake. Wrestling is fake. If you ain't figured that shit out, or people hadn't told you, it's fake. You know? I mean, there's difference between guys, and they're going to be, some are stiffer than others, which is the way it should be. And it, you know, back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, it was more stiff than it is now. Then it became the you know, oh, don't touch me, don't do this, and guys are, you know, missing guys by a mile, and they're taking bumps.
In terms of Mexico, which other guys were in and around with you at the same time, coming through that you had a lot of respect for and enjoyed their style?
Pedro Aguayo was there, Mil Mascaras, of course. They had two guys, the Porkies. They were two big fat guys, funny, great guys. Pirot, he was there. Of course, you know, I know Ray and Juventud. Juvi's a good guy. I love Juvi and Ray. I can't even remember. There was a guy he was a big, taller guy. Oh, man, I'm trying to think of his name. But he had like an Ewok part. His little friend. You know who I'm talking about?
I don't know. I'm nodding. I'm like nodding, just like seeing what you're saying.
He's a bigger Hispanic guy, you know, luchador, but he had a mask, and I can't even remember his name, but he had a little Ewok thing, and it was a midget, and I don't know if you can say midget. Well, he's a midget. Anyway, so he had the Ewok costume, and it was so freaking real. He had the teeth and it looked real. And when he fall, he had the little pods on his feet, you know, the little pads that were leather, and he was furry. And so we ended up tagging together, and the little thing would be there, and I'd just like like a dog. I'm thinking shit. You know, after a while, you just kind of, and I'm start petting. He'd like slap my hand, and I was like, man, I'm sorry, dude. I didn't mean that. I just, you know, you look like an animal. And so he sit there, and then I just look at him like, man, this little thing's cute. And I'd start petting him, and he's like, slap his hand. I'm like, dude, stop. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. I keep forgetting.
How did the Mexican crowd differ for you from your perspective to the American fans?
It's the same. It's the same. To me, it was the same.
Just because they say about like Japan, don't they? The way the spectators are in Japan, more observing. But I was just seeing maybe if there was a difference in Mexicans. But
yeah, Japan. It's if you're doing spots and they're they'll get up with you, but once you just kind of get around moving, then they go down, they sit down. It's weird. The first time I went out there, I was like, what the hell is this? And so what we did, me and Terry, Warlord and Backlund, we were like, all right, the last day of the tour, we're like, we're going to make these suckers. We're just going to burn them out. So we get in, we do big. And the funny thing is me and Terry would do all these power bombs, stuff off the top. I mean, these big power moves, and they'd pop. But Backlund would go out there, wave his hands over his head, and just do stupid chicken things, and they pop just as big. We're like, man, we're doing something wrong, bro. We're doing something wrong. He knows what he's doing. But anyway, so we'd get in there and we'd make them pop, and then they'd sit back down. We'd get out of the ring. We'd bring them up, say, get up. And they'd start clapping. We'd get back in the ring. We'd start doing stuff. As soon as they sat down, we'd get out of the ring. So then they kind of figured, shit, we got to cheer this whole match or they're not going to do nothing. So we did that.
Have you got any more stories about Backlund? Anything you can remember? Anything?
Oh, man, Bob was a good guy. I remember we'd be on a bus or a train or something, and he'd always be reading. And so we're sitting there, and he would look, he'd have his, me and Terry sitting there listening to music or playing video games or something. And he'd turn around, he'd look at us, and he said, we'd have to take our headphones off. We'd say, what? He'd say, like, Inum Conlatus Mendoza's. We'd be like, okay. And then he'd give us the definition of it. Yeah. I mean, he read dictionaries, man. The guy read a dictionary for words. He was intelligent. I mean,
yeah.
And a good guy. But I'm telling you something, that guy was a shooter. He was a lot tougher than 99.9% of the cats today. Bob is a shooter.
Anything I've seen with him, I've seen obviously videos of fans. He's fantastic with the fans as well. He's very good. Yeah. You can tell.
Very good.
He loves it. He loves it. And he was with those fans for a while in this video. Anything they asked, he answered.
Yeah, Howdy Doody. He's like Howdy Doody. That's who I used to call him.
I'm going to fast forward a bit now. WWF. I remember you coming into WWF, watching over here in the UK, and I remember you working a program with Brian Christopher, with Brian Lawler. So how was that going into WWF? How did WWF come about, actually, Scott, before we say about matches?
Well, I mean, they've been around all the time because Dad was the first class of the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, and Vince Sr. loved my dad. Vince Sr. absolutely loved my dad. He probably loved Dad more than he did his own kid. And, back in the day, Dad had a place in Manhattan. He had an apartment in Manhattan that Vince paid for. He had a car up there that he paid for. He wanted our family to move up there. But, of course, we were football players. So my dad was like, you can't get out of Texas and play football. So he wasn't going to do that. So we'd go up and visit and stuff like that. But, so it was always there. And I think if Vince Sr. would have been alive, I would have done a lot more than I did as opposed to Vince, because Vince and Dad, I call him Vinny. He's not really Vince. Vinny didn't like that. They had a rift between each other. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, looking back, that's kind of why I left after I got hurt. But, yeah, he didn't want to. I mean, the dumbass put me in a light heavyweight. I was 250.
I always can I just say about this? I was 11 years old at this point when you came in. This guy is jacked. I always, even at that age, I'm thinking he's too big. He's too big to be working a program at light heavy.
And Shawn Michaels is 180 pounds, and he's the heavyweight champion.
Yeah,
I didn't get it. And I'd ride with. I was always hanging out with Joe and Animal and Hawk, and they were like, "Man, this is bullshit. He's got something against you." And I was like, "Man, it don't matter. He don't like my." And so they basically just, they helped me out, man. I mean, they kept me on kind of an even keel. But, it was shit. It was shit, man. It was. It was good, the work wise, but it just, just how they kind of treated me was shitty.
How was it? How was it backstage from your perspective, or did you just not get involved?
Well, you had the clique with Sean and those guys, and Sean didn't like anybody that was better than him, and they were going to try to put the thumb on anybody. It was back politics like anything. I mean, they wouldn't say it to your face, but you knew what was going on.
How was Brett with you?
Brett was great. I mean, Brett, Davey Boy, all those guys. Yeah, Owen, I was in good with them. So, they really couldn't. He couldn't do anything, and of course, they wouldn't do anything. But it was just a weird deal. It's like, and I look back and I really wish MMA would have been around. UFC would have been around back then, because I mean, I was a legit athlete. I mean, and I would have done that, because, in that, if you kick somebody's ass, you kick their ass. I mean, there's nothing they can't tell you. If you get your ass beat, you get your ass beat. I mean, there's no story. I mean, there is pseudo storylines of build up to the match, but once you get in there, and Conor McGregor, my God, he's the one that made UFC and MMA what it is today.
I'm not having people moaning about him at all. Look how much he is the cash cow. Look how much money he's made. And
what is he supposed to do?
People are like, oh, he's crap, he's this, he's that. He's been the benchmark. He pulls in the most buy rates.
Right. And you can't deny that.
I can't. I love him. I was up on the weekend for the fight. I think
I was bummed, man.
I really thought he was going to beat him, but
he should have, but he just didn't take into account those leg kicks.
No,
that was with his downfall.
Mm-hmm.
Why, I don't know. I mean, but that was it. First round, he had him.
Yeah, he was up. He definitely he had the highest strike. He had the highest strikes.
Yeah,
Poirier couldn't land the strikes.
He wore his legs out.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't hitting him in the shins. He was hitting him in the calves. So that's just me. Now, if he'd have turned his feet out and he'd have hit those calves, he'd have stopped kicking.
They need to. They're gonna have to do it. They're gonna have to do the trilogy fight now, because it's 1-on-1. They have to do that.
He said it. He's interested.
I still maintain his best division, his best weight is 155. I know he's flip-flopped up to 170.
Yeah, he can't go down. He gets too depleted.
Yeah. And then 170, I think it's too much for him in terms of cardio. He's got to stay at 155, Scott.
Yeah. I agree.
We've segued into MMA here.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, man.
But New York, and then, once I got hurt in that pay-per-view, what happened was Brian was going to do a plancha, where they jump over the rope and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And come on, man, the guy wasn't athletic. I mean, I'm sorry. Good guy, but the guy wasn't an athlete. You never saw him do stuff like that. And so, when he said it in the back, I was like, man, have you ever done that before? And, oh yeah, I've done it a bunch of times. I'm like, okay, man. We'll do it. When they do it, they come out with like a crossbody, and you just kind of stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Basically you just push them. You just kind of break their fall and push them, let them fall. Well, if you go back and watch it, he goes and he turtles, and he's falling on his back. He's actually, if he hits the ground, he's going to hit solid concrete or with a little, half an inch mat. So just, the I don't know what you would call it. Just instinct, thought, oh shit, I got to catch him. So I reach out, and I'm not even close. So I'm reaching out, and I'm on one leg, and I reach out to break his fall and catch him. And I catch him, and I pull him back, so I'll kind of roll. And, man, I felt something in my quad. I'm like, what the hell? So he gets up, goes back in the ring. I try to get up, and, man, it's like this pain in my quad. So I pull my knee pad down, and my kneecap is sticking straight up. Yeah.
Man.
So, your instinct is you're in shock. So I grab my kneecap and I push it down. It clicks. I'm like, oh, shit, it's just, my kneecap popped out, which you don't stand up straight if it pops out. So I pull my knee pad up and I start to get up and my quad starts rolling up my thigh.
No way.
And I'm like, oh, shit. And so that was it. I mean, I couldn't even move at that point. But I want to give kudos to Sheik, the Iron Sheik, man. Sheik went all the way with me to the hospital, you know, everywhere. You know, Scotty, your daddy want me to be with you now. You know, your daddy would want me to be with you. And I was like, Sheik, it's good, man. You know, and he was in the ambulance with me. He stayed in the hospital for a while. Finally, I told him, look, Sheiky, baby, you got to go, man. I mean, they're going to give me some good stuff here in a little bit. And I don't want to sit here and dream about you, partner. So Sheiky went on, but what a genuinely good person.
That's incredible, man. He was there right the way through. Can't say any better than that.
He's old school. You know, Sheiky's a good guy, man. I mean, he knew my dad and they had respect for each other. So it was almost like I was a kid. He was going to take care of his kid for him. And he did. I mean, you know, he took my mind off a lot of it. And, you know, if I would have been there by myself, it'd have kind of been a trip.
In hindsight then, prior to the injury, who would you have liked to have worked with in that time in 97 in WWF?
I'd have loved to work with Brett, with Davey Boy, with Owen, with, you know, all those guys. Scott Hall. I mean, to me, and from what I know and what I've seen, Scott Hall was probably the best worker, mic guy ever in the business. My opinion. I think Scott Hall was better than anybody there. Anybody. On the mic, his work, and you know, just, you know, his demons got him, and that's what it was. And you know, I pray he gets better and he comes through. But my opinion, Scott Hall was the best hands down.
Look what they had to do with him, man. They had him as heel when he first came in. He got over so quickly. They had to turn him face. We all, you know, I didn't hate him as a kid. I was like, this guy is cool. Even I could see when I was tiny. And he should have been world champion, Scott.
Oh, easy. And he should have been champion.
I'm not just saying that. I'm not just because I'm not.
No, I agree with you 100%.
I'm not pandering to you because you're saying it. I totally agree. Totally agree, man.
And then you get to WCW, and he was NWO. All his monikers and all his movements, all his gestures, Hogan would steal them from him. And then he'd think of something else. Then Hogan, I mean, and that was the demise of WCW, was Hogan, Nash, and those guys. They didn't want to pass the torch. They wanted to stay on top as long as they could. And they forgot what guys did for them, what the men did for them back in the day. They were trying to hold on to their glory days as long as they could. Then you have a jack-off like Eric Bischoff running. Who was Eric Bischoff? What did Eric Bischoff ever do? I think he was a commentator, wasn't he? I mean, I never even saw him commentate, but that's what they told me. And now you're running a company. And then you have Ted Turner's money. And Ted Turner told the company he didn't give a shit how much money the company made. He'll pump as much money into. He wanted Vince's ass. He wanted to take over Vince McMahon. So you got Ted Turner money. You got all this talent, and you fail. You fold. I mean, that's on Bischoff and the jabronis in the back, you know, the Hogans and all those guys that were trying to run the show. I mean, initially it was cool. Then it got boring. I mean, you can't do the same thing over and over and over. And while he was doing that, you know, as much as I hate Vince, but I don't hate him, but I mean, as much as I dislike Vince, he was building new talent.
Yeah.
And then once that little run was over with, everybody was like, they're going to keep the old guys. And, you know, boom, here, let's watch these new up and coming studs.
Because it could have been, and when you look back at that time frame, fan perspective, you know, you had Scorpio in WWF, great talent. There's guys there that could have done even more. It was like there was so much depth, and as you say, they wanted to make new stars. I know it gets said time and time again. Vince was all for making new stars, wasn't he?
Right. But WCW didn't. But they had a ton of talent there. But they were running Hogan, Nash, you know, Goldberg, and who else was there in there? That was about it, really. But those were the three that everybody had to go through. And it got old.
Scott, how long were you rehabbing the injury? That's what I'd like to ask. How long was the rehab?
The rehab for my quad was about 7 months. 8 months. And at the time, I had called Vince and I said, man, I'm not happy and I just want to release. And so they were, we kind of went back and forth. And finally, I was just like, look, man, I just, I don't even know if I want to wrestle anymore. This, it sucks. And so they gave me my release. Well, at the time, I was good friends with Diamond Dallas Page. So DDP was like, hey, bro, come over to WCW, man. Fuck Vince, let's go. We're going to make a big, And, of course, I trust Dallas. And so I'm thinking, this isn't going to be some bullshit. No, man, it's real, dude. This is real. We got Ted Turner's money. So I'm like, okay. So as soon as I did, the next day I signed with WCW. Well, WCW at first was cool. I mean, they were like, okay, you're hurt. We're going to fly you out, just meet the guys and just kind of hang around, which was fine. Later on, and the difference between Vince and WCW is Vince gives you everything for the whole month. He gives you your itinerary, your tickets, everything for the whole month. WCW, you were getting tickets. I mean, sometimes I got tickets, a ticket on, that was before ticketless tickets. I mean, sometimes I get them Saturday night for Monday Night Nitro. And so it got so redundant, I was so unhappy that, if the ticket didn't come in Friday, I wasn't going. And so we'd take the ticket. The ticket came in Saturday. I'd open the FedEx package, throw the FedEx package, just Frisbee it out in the street, take the ticket and just keep it. And then next time I went to the airport, we had the like a Delta card. And I just, I had a platinum Delta card and I'd say, okay, they wouldn't give you the money for it, but they give you the value of the ticket so you could use it on. Man, I had probably $150,000 worth of tickets, money on a card for tickets. Yeah, because, and so finally they smartened up. And one Monday I get a call from, who was it? It was Terry Taylor. He's like, Scotty, where you at, man? I was like, man, I get a ticket, man. I didn't know I was on the show. He's like, oh, shit. He goes, okay, well, we're going to have a ticket down at Will Call. Get the ticket. He's like, we need you on the show. I'm like, okay. So I go, and this is probably 2:00 in the afternoon. I get there, and, back then you didn't have to wait in line. You just go. It was before all this crap. So I go, I fly to, it was Syracuse, New York, from Texas to Syracuse, New York. I get out, rent a car, go to the arena, get there, stand around for a second. I'm like, Terry, I'm here. He's like, oh, it's okay, man. We don't need you. I was like, oh, okay. So I get back in the rent-a-car and split. And that's it. And, that's what we do. We'd get in a lot of times, because we were a TV company Monday and Thursdays. So a lot of times if you got on early enough, back then you could change your ticket. So we, just get a rent-a-car, go to the arena. And if, I'm like, hey, man, I'd be kind of near the end. I'd say, hey, man, can y'all bump me up to the top so I can, get out here? And they're like, yeah, we'll do it. So they bump you up to the top. You just put your clothes on, didn't need a shower, get your ass to the airport, and you were home that night. So, that part was good. The money was great. It was almost like, I'd go out to my mailbox every 2 weeks and get a check. And I was looking around for, are these dudes punking me, man? Someone's got the TV on me because this shit nothing's this easy. Nothing is this easy. I'm getting a check for doing this and it's, 2 TV. And I'm when, you're used to traveling. And I saw how Dad did it and they were even worse traveling. And so, but WCW could have been the best place in the world to work, but it ended up being the worst because of the office.
How long were you there for, Scott, in total?
Probably three and a half, 4 years.
What were some of your favorite matches down there?
Man, I worked with Eddie Guerrero. I worked with Jericho. Everybody. There was a lot of people out there that I got to, there was us younger guys, man. Could you see what was coming with them guys earlier in their careers when you were down there? Yeah.
Where they were going to go?
It was just a matter of Hogan and them, Bischoff giving them a shot. It was like, there was 100 guys like that. For every guy that did make it, there was 2 other guys that were just as good and just as talented. They just didn't get their shot.
I used to love the cruiserweight matches, man. But they always opened the show.
Yeah, but the thing is they started bringing in a lot of the luchadors and stuff. But once Rey Mysterio and Juventud worked together, you couldn't follow it. When those guys had a match, once they hooked up and got into their zone, there was no way to even follow it. Even with the big guy match, you know, if you had Hogan and Goldberg, you couldn't even follow it because the shit they did was so incredible.
What were your thoughts on Goldberg with the streak and all that sort of stuff?
I mean, it is what it is. I knew Bill. Actually, I played football. Goldberg was at Georgia when I was at TCU. He was a couple years older. But, yeah, we played against each other in college. Bill's a good guy, man. I love Bill. I mean, I respect him. And, you know, good for him, you know. You know, good for him. You know, I hadn't talked to him in a while. But when I was there, I mean, I don't have anything negative to say about him.
That's cool, man. Yeah, well, he's back. He's back on WWE TV. He's coming.
Oh, really?
He's coming. He's taking on the Scottish or Pride of UK Drew McIntyre for the title.
Really?
Yeah, man. Goldberg and Drew at the Rumble this weekend. So yeah, Drew's come back and he looks $1 million, but he's had no fans in the stadiums. So fingers crossed, man.
They can't. I mean, they can't. They got to do something to him.
Just like they reckon 25,000 people at Mania this year in Tampa. So we'll see. We'll see, man.
So they can't even see in Mania. They can't even fill it up, right?
They're basically because of COVID. They're just working on like a third of capacity, I think. So they can get some fans in. A bit like the NFL, where they've had like a Green Bay, where they had the fans in and stuff. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, Scott, if nothing else, man. So after WCW, back to you. What happened after WCW, man?
That was really it, man. At the time I had a kid. I had a son, was born, and I wrestled for about 2 years, and it wasn't me no more, man. My dad was never around when I was a kid, so I was going to do that to my son, and I was done, man. I didn't have it. I didn't want it. I wanted to be around my family.
What did you do after wrestling? What were you doing?
Oh, I used my degree. I was a gang officer for the state of Texas. Yeah. Wow.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Like I said, I had more rapport with the gang members than I did the bureaucracy of the state. So those are the kind of guys I hung out with. So
yeah.
But it was just a thing where it was, they were just a product of their environment. And if you sat down and talked to them, they were no different than us, man. And it was, they were a product of their environment, and they just needed somebody to help them change. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some pure assholes out there, but the majority of them people are good people. They don't have an outlet, or they're products of their environment is what it is. We all are products of, had I been in a different thing, my dad been a plumber, or my dad been a mailman, that's probably what I would have done. If your dad's a drug dealer, you're probably going to be a drug dealer. It's just how it was.
But
how it is.
As you say, everyone deserves a second chance, don't they?
Right. Everybody's second, third, at least a third chance.
I'll take that one from you, man. I'll say to people, I deserve my third chance, man.
Exactly.
Any good? You've spoke about the Road Warriors. Any good stories about Hawk and Animal, man? I'm sure you've got loads, man.
Yeah, I mean, personal life is personal life.
Yeah,
I've never really liked that when people tell about that.
No.
What I have, and my bond with people is my bond with them. And those are stories that I keep sacred. Good or bad, but I keep. I'm just going to keep them sacred.
That's fine. What was your favorite venue to wrestle in?
Madison Square Garden.
How many times in MSG?
I've probably been there, a bunch, 10, 15, 20 maybe. I was there when I was a little kid, so if you count those, hundreds of times. Because Dad and them used to work there once a month. They'd sell out.
Is it just like the vibe of the place for you?
How it's set up. It's like a big sportatorium in Dallas is what it is. It's like a pit. And that's how the sportatorium in Dallas was.
I went in 2013 to MSG, man. I was in New York. I was like, I'll go to the theatre where they've had the boxing. I know Tyson Fury had boxed in there years ago. So yeah, man. What about abroad, where you've wrestled abroad, man? Venues, places, favorite places.
Oh man, Tokyo Dome's cool. man, there's so many places, and it's just, they're all. Just favorite would be MSG because just of the history of it and stuff like that. I mean, once you wrestle there, everything else is, doesn't compare.
I had something else to ask you here before we go. Oh, it'll come back in a minute, man. Oh,
that's okay.
It's gone, Scott. I had something. That was what I was going to ask. I think I know what the answer is going to be to this. Do you see any modern wrestling, or do you just stay away from it?
Yeah, I don't even watch it. I'm an MMA, UFC guy. I can't. I mean, I flip it on, and it just doesn't do it for me. I
thought that'd be the answer.
I mean, even the NFL doesn't do it for me anymore. It's gotten so watered down. You can't hit nobody.
Guys
don't even wear pads. They have no shoulder pads, no thigh pads, no knee pads, no nothing.
I thought that was part of the game, the contact and the.
Exactly. Back in the day, it was. Now they make all this, hundreds of millions of dollars in Tupelo. It's like Tupelo or flag football.
I think because you've said about MMA, we'll go into a bit of MMA. You've said about Conor. Which other guys you like watching in the MMA?
I'm a big I like Overeem. I'm a big Overeem fan. Always loved it. I loved him when he was jacked up, monster.
Pride.
And he got busted on the roids, then he kind of went down. But just when he took on Brock and kicked his kidney through I thought I saw his kidney go out his ear hole when he kicked Brock in the kidney that time. And I mean, it just shows you the difference between real men, a fighter, and a guy who's the toughest man in the world in wrestling, and he gets beaten 37 seconds by Overeem. That kills the business. That kills wrestling. The toughest guy in the world gets beaten 37 seconds. Well, the toughest guy in professional wrestling gets beaten 37 seconds in the octagon. No.
What about going back now? What about Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big Couture Liddell fan, but still, like, we go back, my guy, I love Overeem, but my guy's McGregor, man. Even though he's lost, he's the past, present, and future. He's the best there was, the best there is, or whatever, and the best there ever will be in MMA.
I think the guy to take the brass ring now is Adesanya. Is he?
Yeah,
I think he's the one. John Jones has fucked up that many times now with different things outside of the cage.
But McGregor, as far as just a performer,
oh my God!
I mean, if he'd get his shit together and really train, I don't think he's trained like he used to. If he could get back that animal magnetism, that will to survive, that killer instinct, he can do. I mean, look what he did early on. He was annihilating people, and then he's got the gift of gab. He's got the personality. I mean, the sky's it was the limit. Of course, we all get older and things go down, but at his prime, I think Conor McGregor, pound for pound, was the best fighter.
It's the verbal side as well, the wit.
Right.
He's so quick-witted. Nobody, when they were when they were in that press conference and Cerrone was there. I'm trying to think the other guy was there. Jeremy Stevens. Jeremy Stevens tried to start on him, and he just ripped him apart verbally. He's like, they're all there for a paycheck. They all want to get in there with Conor. But
the McGregor Mayfield fight, if it wasn't for Conor and his gift of gab, nobody would have bought that fight. Nobody wanted to see it. No, early on, the buy rate was so bad. And then when they started doing those worldwide press conferences, and Conor started chewing him up and spitting him out, and he didn't have nothing to say. I mean, it looked like Mayweather had marble mouth. He didn't know what to say. Conor would just shoot him down, and nothing. He couldn't say anything, and Conor would just shoot him down. But it got people interested. Mm-hmm. And he stole that from wrestling. He stole that from professional. He did.
No question. And I just wonder, like, people keep toying with it. Will he turn up? Will Vince take him at some point? I wouldn't be surprised. They've worked with Fury.
Hopefully he won't sell out and go.
They've worked with Fury. Do you know what I mean? Fury came in.
But hopefully McGregor won't sell out and go to Vince. I mean, that was Ronda Rousey. That was her demise. Her demise was going to Vince. You can't. I mean, that's like a football player going into cheerleading. I mean, you can't do that. I'm sorry.
It's summed up perfectly there. Yeah, of course it. Yeah, on the money. Absolutely.
You can't do it. I mean, if you had any self-respect, you wouldn't do it.
Why has he took that fight with Mayweather? Because he's gonna get $100 million to box.
Right.
What would you do? What would you do?
Exactly. You put him in the octagon, and Conor will eat him up. And I mean, he'd have probably toyed with him a little bit, but Conor would have broke his leg, and could have broke his leg in 30 seconds.
And that should have been the terms. Mayweather would never do it to save face.
What they should have done is not necessarily take down, because Mayweather, there's no way. I mean, he'd have just bum rushed him and took him down. But you should have been able to leg kick. You should have been able to, side kick and stuff like. Use your feet and hands. Of course, put pads on. If you don't like it, put pads, kick pads on and boxing gloves. But he still wore them out with those leg kicks and stuff.
What about boxing, Scott?
Fury, other than Fury, that's all. I can't watch anybody else. I love that guy.
What about Anthony Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a big Tyson Fury fan. I like the guy. I mean, and I don't have a lot of time to watch stuff.
No.
And the guy, he's a phenomenon. I mean, you look at him and you're like, a butterbean almost. Looks like a butterbean, a big tall butterbean, and then he's dodging hits and just unbelievable talent, unbelievable.
We're very proud of that man over here.
Unbelievable. I mean, his talent is unbelievable, and his intensity is there too. Guy's not genetically gifted, no. Body wise, but he makes up for in talent, bro. He makes up for talent.
And he beat Wilder at his own game with punch power in the last fight.
Well, he's a mixture between Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali. Mm-hmm. It's exactly what he is. He's a 50-50 Mike Tyson. 50-50 Muhammad Ali.
To just see where he was with the depression and all them years out of the game, and then he came back in, and what
for him, man.
What an advocate!
God bless him, man.
What an advocate for mental health, Scott. When a guy at the caliber of that, a guy who you think's just like too strong to be mentally not with it, and he bared his soul, Scott. He bared his soul. Right. That's incredible. That's incredible to me, man.
I agree. I mean, unbelievable.
Scott, are you available on any social media? I think you're gonna say no here.
Yeah, no, I'm not into. I mean, if you need something, I'll do it for you. But other than that, I don't.
Is there any conventions? Anything on the horizon that way? Wrestle.
I got some coming up. I don't have my book with me right now. I do a couple of them. I'll usually do the ones in New York and stuff like that, and maybe the WrestleMania one. But like I say, I try to stay as far away from wrestling as I can now.
That's understandable, man. That's your prerogative, man. That's cool.
Right.
My guest, all the way from Fort Worth, Texas. I've been there, man. I loved it. They looked after me over there. Great people. Mr. Scott Putski, former WWF, WCW superstar. Thank you very much for coming on Stu's Wrestling Podcast.
All right, brother. You take care, man. It was my pleasure. Love you, bro.
Thank you, man. Thank you. This episode was brought to you in association with Powered 4 TV. So go and check them out for anything wrestling related, old events, new events when we come out of COVID. Podcasts, you name it, it's all there at Powered 4 TV, so find them across social media.